here real quick. Type it out. Let's get into some box office banter. That's right, everybody. Okay, so coming out this week, we have limited release of Life of Chuck from one Mike Flanagan. We also have the From the World of John Wick Ballerina. But as the latest dailies pour in from this weekend, let's see. There is no weekend, no data available yet, but why isn't it showing me anything? Why is it not showing me any movies? Okay, so let's take a look at Lilo and Stitch, first and foremost, because this is one of the bigger winners. Currently sitting at worldwide run of... Where's my StreamYard tab? There we go. Here we go. Sharing screen. Okay, Lilo and Stitch is currently sitting at $632 million worldwide. Okay, so technically it's at 636.7 if you round up, because it's at 632,672,317 worldwide. And that's not including this upcoming weekend, because obviously this upcoming weekend hasn't come to pass yet. So that'll be interesting. That'll be very, very interesting to see how soon that one possibly cracks $1 billion. Next up, we have Mission Impossible creeping up on that $400 million mark. It is now currently sitting at $533,211. So rounding up, we are currently sitting at $389.5 million for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. So that's doing pretty solid, all things considered, even though it has a $400 million price tag, give or take, and that's before marketing. And then moving on to Karate Kid Legends, currently sitting at a worldwide gross of $51,487,036. So rounding up, we're at $51.9 million with a reported budget of $40 million. So the other two I just mentioned are franchise Kickstarter. Well, not Kickstarters, but those are franchise kickers. Those are going to make big. They've made enough money as it is anyway. As far as Ballerina goes, what is Ballerina currently tracking at? Okay, looks like, according to Deadline, this is early tracking for the box office, and obviously it's this weekend, so we have ticket sales to kind of gauge this for. According to Deadline, we have Lionsgate John Wick spinoff Ballerina dancing to 35 million opening weekend, and this is an early box office look. The Len Wiseman directed movie, which underwent additional photography from director and John Wick architect Chad Stileski, finally hits theaters June 6th, a year after it was. That's right, this was delayed by over a year. Currently, the R-rating action title starring Ana de Armas, including a cameo by John Wick himself. Is it really a cameo? Because I feel like if you're going to show him in the fucking trailer, I feel like that would lead credence to him having a bigger part in the movie. But I don't know. I haven't seen the movie, so I couldn't tell you how long or how much he's in it. I'm sure I'll probably talk to Dave about that later on tonight on the vodka stream. He loves talking about the movies that he's seen prior to it. So, what is the reported budget of this movie, though? That's what I'm very curious about. It doesn't exactly say. Ballerina with reshoots cost between $80 to $90 million. We hear Lionsgate sells off foreign funds its movies, retaining US and UK rights. The John Wick franchise as a whole has made over $1.3 billion at the global box office, with John Wick Chapter 4 the highest grossing title in the series at a $440 million plus and 94 with critic score from Rotten Tomatoes. Nobody gives a shit about Rotten Tomatoes, not unless you have a fucking axe to grind. Yeah, Jalen, 80 million, as it just said, between 80 and 90 million. Then you factor in half that for marketing, give or take. That's about $120 million total if you want to break it, and that's the break-even point. But again, that's just purely speaking in terms of box office theatrical run, not including home video sales or streaming numbers, et cetera, et cetera. So will Ballerina top out number one at the box office this weekend? Likely. Very likely. I think it's very likely that it will probably top out at the number one spot at the box office this weekend. But there was another thing that I saw from the Hollywood Reporter that really intrigued me. And I read this, and this is a piece from Pamela McClintock. Would you pay $400 million for this movie? Between delays, reshoots, rising costs, this year's summer blockbusters are racking up astronomically high price tags. When factoring in marketing costs, can the box office keep up? Well, hold on, we've got some kind of spammer in the chat. Or oh wait, that's only on Twitch. Never mind. Anyway, I can't really do anything about that because I don't have the Twitch tab open. Anyway, Paramount's storied lot in 2018, Studio Brass and partner Skydance gave the go-ahead for Tom Cruise to make 2 more Mission Impossible movies following the massive success of Fallout. No one taking part in that decision several years ago could have known what was in store for Hollywood, much less the world or the minefield they would have to cross. Between the COVID-19 delays, the strikes, reshoots, and rising costs due to inflation, the blockbusters hopefuls of the 2025 box office season, from Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, one of the most expensive movies ever made, to DC Studios' Warner Brothers' Superman and Universal Amblin's Jurassic World Rebirth, are saddled with price tags requiring sky-high box office returns. Rebirth, however, did rein in its budget substantially compared to the prior film. Interesting. Another title getting buzz for its budget is the Apple original film's highly anticipated F1, which Warner Brothers is releasing theatrically. One source says the budget is $300 million, a figure disputed by the filmmakers. If that figure is the total before tax rebates and production incentives, the net budget could indeed be substantially lower. If it isn't, ultimately they could spend, the ultimate spend could approach $400 million when including marketing costs. Sure, I guess. But this is also Apple, who funded the project to begin with. So $300 million, it's important to remember here, $300 million to Apple. Wow. Other studios like Warner Brothers, Disney, Universal, Sony Pictures, they would look at a $300 million movie and be like, oh my fuck! Yeah, they'd be like, oh my fuck. Apple, on the other hand, much like Amazon, well, they can look at it and go, $300 million? Whatever. We'll make that back in iPhone sales. Apple doesn't give a shit, neither does Amazon. We're talking about the two whales here. So as far as F1 is concerned, no matter what it does at the box office, the minute it goes to Apple TV Plus, it'll be fine. But even then, if they lose money on this, Apple's just going to be like, oh, fuck, whatever. Warner Brothers, on the other hand, they would have something to lose, maybe in marketing, but that's about it. They're not really losing too much on this. Since Apple funded the goddamn thing and Warner Brothers is distributing it, whatever they make at the box office, whatever they make at the box office. Whatever theaters make is whatever theaters make. But this is pertinent to F1. That is one film. It is a case-by-case basis, as we know, when it comes to box office. Now, moving on to Final Reckoning. According to this, the combined cost was a net $700 million before marketing. Now in theaters, Final Reckoning's budget is $400 million after subtracting tens of millions of dollars in tax incentives and rebates from the various countries included on the globe-trotting shooting schedule. As a way of comparison, Fallout's net budget was anywhere between $200 to $250 million. Quote, "These costs are not sustainable. Obviously, there were unique items that didn't help the budget, such as strikes and COVID. Cost will come down as the business normalizes." I doubt that. Says one Wall Street analyst, Eric Handler of Roth Capital. There is a reason studios shoot outside of LA, so they rely on incentives and rebates from states or countries overseas. But meanwhile, Donald Trump put a fucking 100% fucking tariff on films filming outside of the US because we want to make films great again, folks. Make American films great again. Big orange fucking moron he is. Anyway. Turning to the list of most expensive films, Final Reckoning would come in behind 2015 Star Wars The Force Awakens, $447 million. And 2018 Jurassic World's Fallen Kingdom, $432 million. And like The Final Reckoning, a slew of mega-budget tentpoles saw their budgets dramatically impacted by the pandemic and strikes, including 2022's Avatar: The Way of Water, which cost well north of $400 million, and 2022 Jurassic World's Dominion at roughly $432 million. Again, these are net budgets before marketing spending. Okay, listen. Avatar: Way of Water, I can understand that film costing $400 million because James Cameron is one of the most innovative computer-generate effects directors in the market, and he is constantly utilizing and experimenting with technology to make the most pristine picture look as realistic as possible. So I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying the reason that budget costs that much, well, look at the person making the movie, look at the experimental technology behind it. I may not be a fan of those movies, but I can look at that budget and I can look at what that movie is looking like on a big screen and being like, yeah, is it justified? I don't know. I don't know the yes or no answer to that. I will just say, was it worth it? Well, Avatar: Way of Water made well over $1 billion, if not closer to two. I don't remember what the budget was or what the box office haul was. I just know that I was wrong. I was 1,000% wrong. Never bet against James Cameron when it comes to box office, folks. Never bet against James Cameron. And I promise you, Avatar: Fire and Ash is probably going to do just as well as Way of Water. But we'll see. We haven't even seen a fucking frame of footage from that movie yet. Anyway. Moving on. Last year, documents filed by the Superman production team with the Ohio government seeking incentives listed the gross budget of the highly anticipated July film as $363.8 million. When that number was reported, director James Gunn, who runs DC Studios, lambasted the article. How in the world do they think they know what our budget is? He wrote on social media. In recent days, DC suggested the box office budget is a net of $225 million after incentives and tax breaks. Yet, one longtime financer says the $363 million figure isn't incorrect, and sources say DC and its parent could spend as much as $200 million on the global marketing campaign, compared with the usual $150 million for an all-audience summer tentpole. It wouldn't be a surprise, since Superman kicks off the Gunn era and needs to work at the box office either way. Between the production budget and the marketing, it's certain to land in the $400 million club. I mean, what I think, number one, the person who wrote this article, Pam McClintock, for the most part, has usually never steered anyone wrong. She has always provided facts without feelings. She is a very good reporter in that respect. So, is James Gunn lying about the budget for this movie? No, I don't think he is. I would say that when it comes to just the budget of making the movie itself, yeah, you could land somewhere in between $225 million to, maybe upwards of $250 million. The reported budget, as far as I know, is like $225 million. However, if this marketing campaign is north of $150 to $200 million, then yes, figuratively, that would then put a combined total of it to around $360 to $400 million, and your break-even point at that point being $400 million. You would have to then double, if not double and a half that, i.e., if this movie wants to be truly profitable and successful, that would put it somewhere in the $800, $900 million range to be successful, more or less. According to a veteran studio source, Superman, which opens July 11th in North America, is exploding on social media. The first full trailer raking in 250 million plus views, the most in Warner Brothers DC history. Based on such metrics, a domestic debt of 175 million or thereabouts is within the realm of possibility. It even has a shot at finishing with 1 billion plus globally. There is no way to defend these budgets because when you get into the 700 to 900 million break-even point in regards to box office and ancillary revenue, it doesn't make any sense. And that's true. It doesn't. I can remember a time when you didn't have to make well over $700 to $800 million in order for your fucking movie to be successful. The problem is when, again, it's a case-by-case basis. When you're talking about a big budget film about a superhero, yes, you have to factor in merchandise sales. Yes, you have to factor in, word of mouth. You have to factor in, the quality of the movie in order for this fucking thing to be successful. But the problem is like, when your film starts to exceed and balloon a budget of $300 to $400 million, that's high risk, potentially high reward, but that's not a guaranteed reward, as we've seen. Marvel Studios spent close to 300 something million on Ant-Man Quantumania. It barely made 476 million at the box office worldwide. And then you get to the Marvels. Oh God. The thing is like, when it comes to making these big budget superhero movies, I think there is an over-reliance on visual effects, an under-reliance on getting those visual effects done and in on time, and then you also lock these movies into a fucking release date, and that just, again, you create a time crunch, you create a funnel, you create just a smaller window for your people to being able to finish this fucking thing on time to make it look good. I mean, look at what happened with Justice League. They rushed that film out just so a bunch of idiots up top can get their fucking Christmas bonus. It is crazy. Yes, Jalen, it can be confusing. It can be very confusing because on paper, when you just look at base metric numbers, when you just look at, oh, okay, well, Superman only cost, I'm just using this as an example. Superman, 2025 Superman, directed by James Gunn. The net budget of that movie, $225 million. Leave marketing out of the fucking picture, okay? On paper, that movie should only need about $500 million to be successful. But then, again, once you factor in marketing, merchandise, all that shit, then your margin for success increases. And by margin of success, your break-even point... Words are hard. Your point for breaking even also raises. It's a tough fucking world. And on top of that, Mr. fucking number 47 doing his dumb bullshit 100% tariffs on films being filmed outside of the US. It's like, dude, you don't understand why people aren't making movies in the United States, because it's fucking expensive. If they go to actual locations, they get tax breaks. Like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Anyway. Moving on. Jurassic World Rebirth opens 9 days earlier during the 4th of July quarter. Okay, so here's something to take into consideration. Jurassic World Rebirth opens July 2nd, and then it bleeds into the July 4th weekend, meaning it will have from Wednesday, July 2nd, all the way until Sunday, July 6th, and that will collectively be taken into consideration for its, quote, opening weekend box office. Even though that movie has a price tag of about $180 million, the total cost could come in between $330 to $400 million when you include marketing. And you best believe that Universal has been on a massive marketing push for their Dino movie. Yes, they have. They have been putting out behind the scenes stuff. They've been putting out posters. They've been showing fucking Scarlett Johansson playing with the new round of dinosaur toys. When it comes to July, Jurassic World is going to come out. It's going to have a great weekend. Next week after that, Superman comes out. That, I guarantee you, Jurassic World Rebirth is going to see at the very minimum a 50% drop when Superman comes out. 1 week later after Superman, you have the Smurfs and you have I Know What You Did Last Summer. How will those impact Superman's box office? I don't think Smurfs is going to impact it at all. I Know What You Did Last Summer? Yeah, it may take a little bit. I think if Superman is a good enough movie, and by good enough, I mean good word of mouth, good quality, then people will return on that second weekend to go see it. However, once Fantastic Four comes out, game off. Superman will continue to make money, but hopefully, here's the hope. If you are a fan of superheroes, if you're a fan of comic book characters, if you love Superman, if you love the Fantastic Four, it would be in your best vested interest to do a double feature of Superman and Fantastic Four that weekend of July 25th, and especially the Comic-Con. That might be a little bit of a boost because you have a bunch of nerds in San Diego constantly going to the theater to see not one, but hopefully both Superman and Fantastic Four. So, Jalen, no. I don't think pre-sales have started for Jurassic World Rebirth. I believe those go on sale next week. Same with Superman. And then Hosi XCI, if you were to guess how much money Superman makes, how much are you talking? Okay. I think, again, this is just my opinion. I don't know that those early trackings of 150 to 175 million are accurate. I think if Superman's going to be good, I think it will land in its opening weekend at the very least. The minimum, I think, is 120 million opening weekend. I think you can safely possibly guess that it could make 120 million on its opening weekend. I think that's plausible. 150 to 175 million, I'd be surprised. I would genuinely be surprised if it made that much worldwide, mind you. I'm talking worldwide. If it will probably clear that worldwide, but domestically speaking, I think that Superman is going to land somewhere in the 120 to maybe possibly on the high end of $140 million opening weekend. And that's me being generous. Because again, we don't know. There are people who are not going to see that movie for stupid reasons. There are people who are not going to see that movie because they're just not interested. And then there are going to be a lot of people who do see that movie. So it's kind of a tough call. But I do think, I 1000% believe that once Superman comes out, it is absolutely going to hinder Jurassic World Rebirth's box office. That much I am sure of. How much do you think Fantastic Four is going to make? I think Fantastic Four, well, you know, they've had minimal reshoots. Matt Shackman is really great with a budget. Honestly, it really depends on what the reported budget comes out to being and if these first day ticket sales are any indicator. I think it can do. I think Superman and Fantastic Four have the potential domestically to do anywhere between 100 to 150 million dollars domestically. Worldwide, that's a bit tougher. I think worldwide, you know, look at their, is it really a fair comparison? Not really. Warner Brothers' biggest worldwide opening was Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, specifically DC, right? Like that had a $422 colossal $1 million opening weekend. But then you get to something like Superman. Or rather, you know, here's another one. The Batman. What was the Batman's opening weekend, right? Oh, wait, I already have Box Office Mojo open. Hold on. So let's compare the Batman, right? Because that is essentially a reboot for Batman in the same way the Superman movie is serving as a reboot for Superman. So Batman's domestic opening weekend was, let's see, where is it? It's a Lifetime, bro. Where the hell's the domestic opening weekend? Performance. Original release. Domestic. Okay, so domestic weekend for its opening weekend. So for comparative purposes, The Batman made $134 million domestically its opening weekend. That would lead credence to my theory of Superman, a reboot of the next Superman, because this followed Ben Affleck's Batman, followed being loose term there. Since Henry Cavill is no longer Superman, this is a new Superman. This is David Cornsweet. This movie is directed by James Gunn, right? And given all the buzz that this film has, again, like, I'm theorizing that Superman domestically will make somewhere between 120 to 140 million dollars opening weekend. The Batman made 134 million. That is literally right in between what I'm theorizing for Superman, and they are, Batman and Superman are DC's biggest powerhouse characters. If the Superman film is as good in terms of quality and in terms of story, much in the same way the Batman was, I can absolutely see Superman doing similar numbers. I can see that being a real possibility. So, what are you guys saying, right? Like, how much do you think Fantastic Four is going to make? I think it's going to make somewhere between 100 and 130 million dollars domestically. Worldwide, probably somewhere between 2 to 3, maybe 400 million. I don't know. It just kind of depends on how good the movie is. I know this is crazy to say, but I would not be surprised if all 3 July movies make $1 billion again. I understand it's a fantasy dream, but you never know. If we were in pre-pandemic, pre-heavy streaming landscape, Jalen, I would maybe be inclined to agree with you, but then I would also look at what happened in 2018 with Avengers Infinity War, Deadpool 2, and Solo. You have 3 big franchises there. One of them fucking bombed, and arguably it was from the bigger franchise. Granted, Deadpool and Avengers are now more or less kind of the same franchise, but even still, treating them as separate franchises, Deadpool being its own thing, Avengers being their own thing, Star Wars, the Solo film being its own thing. The first 2, like, Avengers made out like a fucking bandit. That made over $2 billion. Deadpool, again, Deadpool 2 did around the same amount as the first movie, around 800 million, give or take, and some change. Star Wars, a Star Wars story fucking bombed. So I don't know. I really don't know. I've been saying this for a while. I think Jurassic World Rebirth is going to be the one that earns the least of the 3 in July. I think Superman and Fantastic Four are absolutely going to make more money, but I'm happy to be wrong. Kids love dinosaurs. Adults love the Jurassic World franchise because they can just go watch this movie and fucking turn their brain off. So I don't know. I also think that Jurassic World Rebirth is going to fall into a similar category that Transformers Last Night did. But the caveat is Transformers Last Night was done by the same guy who did the last 4 Transformers movies. So, of course, the quality just continued to dip. This, on the other hand, Jurassic World Rebirth, is being done by Gareth Edwards. And Gareth Edwards is a very accomplished filmmaker in his own right. So I do think Jurassic World Rebirth has the potential to be a better made movie and better quality of life than those other 3. However, I do think that people are looking at the Jurassic World franchise and being like, really? Another one? I don't know. They might just wait for it to hit streaming or digital at the very least to watch it.